The only scan tool you need, the MotorScan Universal Diagnostic Scan Tool, for motorcycles, scooters, ATVs and UTVs, and side-by-sides. Handheld and easy to use. Works with 87 brands, over 6,000 models, and more than 16,000 applications.
From the trails to the track, DID chains are manufactured with the highest quality materials and designed to give you an optimal riding experience and are the top chain choice worldwide. When performance, quality, and consistency matter, go with DID. What drives you?
Hey there, everybody. How's it going? Welcome back to another awesome episode of On the Throttle with Jacqui Van Ham and my buddy Josh over here, bringing you all of the news and things and stuff going on in motorcycles and power sports. We have got an excellent show for you today, Josh. Lots of news going on. And then I know for my neck of the woods, what we're going to talk about today is if you watched last week's show, which I know each and every one of you did, or perhaps if you didn't, you can always go back down thread on Facebook or on YouTube at our Motorcycle Powersports news pages and go watch all of these previous shows. Josh last week put forth the opinion that MotoGP is terrifically boring, and I am here to tell him he's wrong. He's absolutely wrong. The Italian MotoGP was just this past weekend. It was amazing. So spoiler alert, we're going to talk about that. And then we're also going to be talking about another Italian brand that featured and showcased a new motorcycle at the Italian MotoGP. We're going to talk about that a little bit. What do you got going on in your neck of the woods, Josh?
So we are going to talk about a new way to come up with online order regret and to have it be very expensive. And then on top of that, we're going to talk about something that could be a halo bike that's been talked about that's probably in the next 4 or 5 years. Some interesting information from a CEO of a company that I think people are going to want to hear.
Well, I'm really excited to hear about something, some more regret spending I can do online other than Amazon. So I'm definitely looking forward to your story today, Josh. Let's go ahead and first things first, let's talk a little bit about some of the hot and heavy action going on, no matter what Josh has to say. Hot and heavy action going on from this past weekend at the Italian MotoGP. That's right, the Italian MotoGP just took place this past weekend. Some of the highlights, we won't get all super deep into it, but some of the highlights of the event were the fact that yet again, twice this season, the top 5 positions off of pole for the launch of the race were held by a single manufacturer. That manufacturer was Ducati. That's right. Ducati once again put 5 of their bikes on the very front of the grid. This time, of course, at their basically home track, seeing as Mugello is like about an hour or so away from the home of Ducati in Italy. The first time that happened this season was over in Austin, Texas, and that has not happened for the folks at Ducati in a very long time. So it happened twice in one season already. So it's already shaping up to be a very interesting race season with all of these Ducati factory and Ducati satellite teams. The other little bit of interesting news is that the pole position was held by an absolute rookie. The name is going to be John Antonio. John Antonio was a gentleman named John Antonio held the pole position, and right next door to him was another rookie, and then the third place position was another racer who's not super duper well known in MotoGP. So let's talk a little bit about that as well. As I mentioned, the first position, the rookie was Fabio Di Gianantonio, starting from pole. Fellow rookie Marco Bezzecchi was in second, and then VR46 Racing teammate Luca Marini was in third. So already, 5 bikes right out of the jump are Ducati. 3 of them are relative newcomers at Mugello, which is incredibly exciting. Spoiler alert, just to let you know how the race ended up shaking out. It was Italian Bagnaia who ended up winning this race, which was incredibly, exciting for him to win at basically your home track and win in your home country. That is always a huge, big deal. Fabio Quartararo took second, Aleix Espargaro took third, Johann Zarco 4, and Bezzecchi in 5. As far as the standings for the season, it is Fabio Quartararo in 1, Aleix Espargaro 2, Bastianini 3, Bagnaia 4, and Zarco in EP35. So that's going to be where MotoGP is standing right now. But the other exciting news going on from the track this weekend in Italy, first of all, they paid homage to Valentino Rossi and they retired his number 46 for perpetuity. Max Biaggi, one of Italy's favorite sons, the Roman emperor himself, was also honored and inducted into the MotoGP Hall of Fame. And the last bit of very interesting news coming out of Italian MotoGP weekend is the fact that Marc Marquez announced that he will be leaving MotoGP 2022 season effective immediately. He has suffered a pretty catastrophic injury to his arm back in 2020. It has not resolved itself in the past 2 years, and he now has to have, no matter what he does, he's gone through tons of therapy, he's had multiple surgeries, it is not resolving. He is admitting now that he is not enjoying racing, and he is in incredible pain at every single race, and he's not capable of performing at the level that he needs to be. So he is absolutely stepping back, and he's going to have surgery performed here in the United States in the next handful of months, and then it will be probably about a year to possibly 18-month recovery. So we will all have to wait and see what happens with his return in 2023. Josh, I know you think MotoGP is terrifically boring, but what do you got to say about all this news going on from the weekend in Italy?
So let's not say terrifically boring, but let's say there's another few race series that I like better. So the other things that I saw out of this that was kind of cool is the other news that came out of this too is that first off, Aprilia signed Ale and Maverick to 2 more years, and Aprilia will be the chosen bike for the next 2 years for the VR46 team. So those were 2 other big pieces of news that came out of this weekend. Also, me being kind of a fan of that moniker, I'm like, yeah, I kind of like seeing that. It was good racing. I mean, it always is. Marquez is one of those guys that had that catastrophic injury that you just never knew if he was going to return from. Years ago when Mick Doohan, had to have the 42nd surgery on his ankle, and that was basically fused. You could tell it wasn't the Mick Doohan from before that. So I get it. This is a physical sport. There's no 2 ways about it. And unfortunately, a bad off can end it. And it looks like that's happened. Hopefully they can patch him up and he comes back stronger than ever.
Yeah, he's been seeing a specialist here in the United States in Minnesota, and seeing specialists in Spain. They've made the executive decision to fly over here and have surgery performed in this country by those top specialists. But all that being said, he still managed to finish in 10th place at this race this weekend in Italy. So, I mean, while this is catastrophic for him, and he's saying that he's on the struggle bus. I mean, how bad are you on the struggle bus? You placed 10th spot. But all jokes aside, it is going to absolutely change the rest of the season, and I think make it even more exciting than it already is. So I know I personally will be tuning in and watching every single race from here on out, especially now that Marc Marquez has stepped away, just because it adds a whole nother level of excitement to the 2022 season. Now, what do you have going on in your neck of the woods, Josh?
Speaking of excitement, have you ever come home and you find a package on the door and you're like, what the hell is this? I believe you've probably done that. Have you?
Like today or just in general? Yes, absolutely. I have absolutely ordered things, forgotten I ordered things, didn't mean to order things, possibly had a couple beers and ordered things. I mean, yeah, all of these things are possible scenarios.
Have you ever done that to the tune of 187 horsepower? Because that is what Suzuki is doing now. They're testing this in France. You can go online and order your motorcycle, like my little add to cart graphic here that I put in for this one. So you can literally go online and order your motorcycle from Suzuki. And so it's an interesting way that they're doing this. And I'm interested to see how it works out. So all bikes, even limited edition ones, are listed as available online as long as there's stock in those, or there's going to be some coming up. what happens is this turns into kind of that online reservation thing. So if you click add to cart, within 2 days, your local dealership is going to contact you and say, hey, great, go ahead, let's get that credit card number for the down payment, which you already have made a $500 deposit, is all it takes to secure this bike. You make the $500 deposit within 2 days, the dealership calls you and sets up the financing, the rest of the stuff, all the delivery items. So at midnight, if you say, hey, I'm thinking a Hayabusa would be a good idea, then you can go ahead and do that by merely putting a $500 deposit down on your credit card. Now, on the flip side of this, that is a refundable deposit. So Suzuki's not going to, I mean, if you accidentally left swipe on the Hayabusa, Suzuki isn't going to make you regret that to the tune of $500. They are going to let you back out of it if you want to. One of the things that I find that's interesting is when you look at how for years and years and years, the dealership model has been the same. It's always worked the same way. When you look at what Tesla's done to kind of disrupt that in the automotive side, I think a lot of motorcycle companies are like, okay, how can we make this work for everyone? So I see this as maybe a step forward. Obviously, a lot of the bargaining has gone away. There's guys that used to live for going into the dealership and haggling. That doesn't happen as much anymore with the way the market is and the way demand is. So with the way things are set up, this is something it's an interesting pivot. Will it move more bikes? Will it move more bikes from different dealerships? How will it change the market for this? I don't know. But France is going to find out, and I am very, very curious to see how this works out. What are your thoughts about the drunk order here, Jackie?
First of all, when is ordering a Hayabusa not a good time? Not the
No,
correct
that's always
answer,
a good
by the
time.
way. Yeah,
Right.
always go Hayabusa. Always be Busa. The thing is I am very interested in this little chunk of news because for the past handful of years, I'm going to have the very unpopular opinion here on the show. I feel like the dealership model is a dinosaur. I think it has needed to change. I think that the market has changed on its own, and the dealership model has not adapted to go with it. I think that we are too set in our ways here in this country. France being a much smaller market, it makes them more nimble, more agile. They can do experimental things like this and not rock the boat too hard. They're not answering to 200, 300 dealerships, across the country. There's probably 20. But I think that this is absolutely the future of dealerships. I have said this for the past handful of years. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I've got a crystal ball, but I mean, the writing is on the wall, man. Now everyone's buying their gear online. You can absolutely compare shop online for bikes, for gear, for helmets, for boots, for jackets, for all the things and stuff. Dealerships that I go into regularly are often complaining about how they can't compete with online sales. Well, then let's ditch that aspect of it and let's just have dealerships become places that unbox and help deliver your new bike that you've ordered online and then do service and make them be service centers. Minimize the footprint, minimize the amount of money you have to spend at your dealership, and have them become more efficient and possibly even have a larger spread of these service centers around the United States. Again, just my 2 cents, but I'm really interested in seeing this business model and seeing how this shakes out. I personally would love to see this in the US. I think it makes incredible sense, especially now that we have all these other companies that are using this type of idea, like Carvana, like Tesla, where you just order a thing and then they come to you. There's like a setup fee or delivery fee or whatever it is, and you get your thing and they come right to your house. Like, now that this is the shape and this is the face of automotive, motorcycle has to step up. Motorcycle also has to take notice of this and also realize that this is how people really want to shop. People aren't really enjoying necessarily this going in and haggling. This idea too, I think, is a bit of a dinosaur because we can already find the prices online. I can already research the bike online. I already know what it does. I already know what it's about. So anyway, I'm really curious to see what happens here. What do you think, Josh?
And I agree with you in the dinosaur aspect. The only thing that I see that's interesting with it that's tough is motorcycles are a fit too. There's some bikes that I fit great on. There's some bikes that I just don't fit on. And I am the average size human. So it's that fit and feel is the thing that's missing. But I agree with you in so many aspects. Is for them not to have the storage, the floor plan, the things of that nature. What's tough about that is in so many ways, the manufacturers depend on that floor plan and that financing money in order. I mean, Yamaha made more financing their stuff than they made more in motorcycling last year. So it's figuring out how this all works out. But I agree, the model that we have is a dinosaur. It's got to change. It's got to step up, and we're going to see a pretty quick evolution here.
Speaking of evolution and speaking of changing, by the way, my next story for today that I wanted to talk about, and it also touches on a little bit again a little bit of new news, a little bit of folks that are doing it different, but it also touches on again the fact that MotoGP was in Mugello this past weekend. Italian motorcycle manufacturer Energica, the electric bike company, went ahead and revealed one of their machines that is going to be launching literally today. You can go to their website right now, today, click on it, put your deposit on it, and check it out and go ahead and see this beautiful, beautiful new bike. Now, this I find really, really interesting because, as you can tell on your screen, that's an adventure bike. I mean, this is an adventure bike, a kind of sporty, like a sport adventure bike is what this is. And that is absolutely how they are branding, packaging, and selling this bike. Now, here's what I think is interesting. It is an Italian company. It is a European company. For those of you that are familiar with Europe or have had the chance to ride over in Europe, anything longer than 2 hours is considered tour. And the fact that the countries are so tiny, people just don't ride like they do here in the US. I've got a lot of buddies that are iron butt long haul riders, and the thought of some sort of long haul adventure bike, electric bike, these words, none of them make sense together. But for European market in particular, this makes a lot of sense. So let's get into a little bit of the specs about this bike. Energica is called the Experia, by the way. Electric Tour was revealed in Mugello this past weekend. Again, as of today, literally, you can go to energicamotors.com, go ahead and find all of the specs details and put your money down on one if you're interested. They're available to order, like I said, as of today. They do have road focus 17-inch rims. So again, while they're calling it an adventure bike, in my mind, it's kind of adventure quotations because most adventure bikes, especially ones that are here in the US market, are going to have bigger tires. This is a 17-inch tire bike. It is now part of the new Energica Green Tourer program. It also produces a claimed 101 brake horsepower at 7,500 RPM and is limited to 112 mile per hour with 0 gear changes to get there. That's right. This bike is going to be a bit of a clutchless, shiftless design, as all e-bikes are. You don't have to shift them. You can just wind it up if you want. Slightly down on petrol-powered competition like the Kawasaki Versys, it gets a healthy claimed torque of 85 foot-pound at the wheel. It also has 6-stage traction control, 4 different riding modes, lean-sensitive ABS, all sorts of tech, all sorts of whiz-bangs are on it. The motor is brand new from them as well, putting out a maximum of 22.5 kilowatt hour, which is the largest of any e-bike put out right now. It has the largest capacity. It can go from a 0 to 80% charge in 40 minutes. And this comes with both a quick charger and conventional. The other thing that I thought was really interesting now, because I know my American friends out here are going to be chomping at the bit. What is the range of this bike? What is the range of this bike? What is the range of this bike? Because everybody talks about range when they talk about e-bikes in this country, which cracks me up for multiple reasons. But anywho, the range on this bike is a claimed 150 miles. So again, I find this very interesting because in this country, 150 miles, I mean, you've barely gone anywhere, right? So I don't know exactly how much of a fit this is for American market, but I do think that this is super, super interesting, particularly with the quick charge capability. You know, it's incredibly stylish. It's very beautiful. The first edition comes with these hard boxes on it. They already have some accessories and other goodies to put on the bikes as well. I think it's interesting. I'm really curious to see how this goes. What do you think, Josh?
It's funny because I've done some poking around with this thing too, and I mean, to me, it's got that multi-strata slash kind of TRK slash versus slash. I mean, with the wheels and tires, it's in that realm. It's an upright riding position. It'll be sporty enough. It'll be. I mean, most people not going to push it past its limit. In all that, the range thing that you mentioned, I see this as so many people that ride at anything quote unquote labeled adventure feel like, hey, it's got to be 400 miles in between fuel stops or I don't care. Really, with this bike, if you feel, I mean, I saw the numbers on it, it's 152 miles of claimed range on the highway. You're closer to 200 if it's in town. So let's figure you can get on average 120. That's 2 hours of saddle time. I mean, if you're on back windy roads, that's a solid 2 hours of saddle time. East of the Mississippi, to stop for 20, 30 minutes to zap that thing back to life, I don't see that as a deal breaker. I see this. So it's so many. I think it's more getting people past that hump of realizing that, hey, you zap this thing and you're good for another hour or two. You zap it again, you're good for another hour or two. Schedule your lunchtime. And we talked before the show about snack time. Schedule your snacks and lunches around a charger. And once again, you're not, I mean, west of the Mississippi, riding out into the desert. No, this is not the bike for that. But anywhere on the East Coast, I think this is pretty usable because that's much more that European type of deal. Over in Europe, this will be a hit. I mean, I think it's great. It's perfect. I mean, wind it up, go have fun, stop, drink your coffee or tea or whatever it is in the country that you're at, plug that puppy in. By the time you're done with your tea and scalded your face, you're good to go.
See, I'm going to go ahead and say that I disagree with you. I think that this is more ideally suited for those more off-road desert West Coast type places because you're not really putting that much miles on the bike. You're not going that far. You're not going that fast. If you're doing actual real off-road or soft road or dirt out west, you're not really doing more than 150 miles in a day. Like heck no. There's no way. I mean yes, there's a way. I'm totally joking. But I know I've spent all day on dirt bikes and maybe gone 20 miles and been out there all day. So I think this is kind of a really interesting weapon for that kind of riding. Again, for the American market, I think it's going to take a little bit of a push for people to wrap their minds around the fact that you have to stop every 2 hours and let this thing charge up. The ABS on this bike also stands for always be snacking and pulling over and getting yourself a snack, getting
Correct.
yourself something to eat every 2 hours. But I do think it's incredibly beautiful. They are not releasing price as of yet, but I can tell you the rest of the beautiful Energica lineup is between $23,000 and $30,000. So I'm not quite sure exactly where this guy is going to land in there. So we're all going to have to wait and find out. But I do think it's incredibly beautiful and the first of its kind. There is no other that I know of electric adventure bike on the market as of yet. So, I mean, other than Zero. So, other than Zero, I haven't really seen very many other players in this space. So, I'm really curious to see how this goes and see what happens. So, anyway, what do you got going on for your next story, Josh?
So speaking of kind of new-ish bikes or new ideas and things of that nature. So the CEO of MV Agusta, which is Timur Sardarov, was in conversation with a few journalists about, I mean, looking to possibly resurrect the iconic F4 name. So for those of us that are old, we'll just gonna call it what it is. We remember when the F4 came out in 99. It originally came out as a 750, and this was a Tamburini design like the 916 and the 996, which are some of those beautiful bikes on the planet. We should have a photo of it here also. This original F4 is probably one of the, I mean, I just sat there and drooled over this.
Yeah,
I
this is a
drooled over
yes.
this. Yeah, I mean, I drooled over this more than I did over the swimsuit issue of Sports Illustrated when I was that age. It just, this bike is just absolutely gorgeous. If you see the back end of it, there are four exhaust pipes that exit out under the seat. It looks like the world's most gorgeous pipe organ, except it's attached to a 750cc, I mean, pipe organ. We'll call it that. The music that came out of this thing was phenomenal. Everything about this thing was an amazing bike. So what's interesting about it is MV Agusta is changed directions, and they're trying to find that different niche of that high end bike with in terms of the looks, with different manufacturing capabilities. And so it's no longer just this unobtainium, which this bike was when it came out. So one of the interesting things that he said was that it is not going to be as narrow minded as a sports bike. This came out in 99 when sport bikes were going through that huge resurgence. Obviously, sport bikes aren't as popular as they once were. So, where are they going to head with this? What he said that's interesting about it is that it's probably 4 or 5 years out. And they're trying to design a bike that is going to look amazing, not be a sports bike, and have all the tech that they need for 5 years in the future. So the reason why I bring all this up, especially that 5 year part, is it's one of those things that I wanted to talk about because I want people to kind of be aware. Let's see what they're able to pull off with this. To follow this up, this F4 name up, it's going to have to be something special. So I'm really excited about it. What are your thoughts of them using the name? What are your thoughts of them kind of trying to build something 5 years in the future, Jacqui?
Well, it's absolutely not unheard of for manufacturers to start designing things
Right.
way, 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 way in advance of their release date. I know of several projects released by several large manufacturers that have been 8, 10 plus years in the
Yep.
making since the very first iterations or very first thoughts of them as a machine. So that's not uncommon. That's not unheard of. My question mark though is how they're going to use that name and say it's not going to be a sport bike, then it's not the same bike. Then don't use that name. I'm kind of a little bit confused by that because if you're going to name something after one of
I
the
am
most
too.
beautifully designed sport bikes of all time, it kind of has to be a beautiful sport bike.
And it's funny. It's funny because when you look at this bike, this is a 99. This could be a 2022. You could say this is the
Oh
2000
yeah.
brand new 2022, and no one would question it. It is that
Nope.
beautiful.
It's timeless.
Um,
It's so timeless. It's so timeless. It's so
yep.
perfect. It is so absolutely on the nose and classic that again, if you want to build something different, I mean, bravo. And MV Agusta has been doing lots of different things the past
Yes.
handful of years, and they've been very very cool and very very interesting. But I am
Yes.
very curious to see what this is going to be. So I guess we're all going to have to wait for the next handful of years before this comes to light, and we're gonna have to all wait and see, right, Josh?
Yeah, it's to me it's one of those things where it's kind of this heads up to see what is this actually going to be. It's that curiosity of what's going to happen here. That's, I mean, let's face it, it drives all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. For all of us bike nerds and bike nuts, we love waiting on pins and needles to see like what's coming next and who's going to be making what. That's part of the fun of being in motorcycling is all of these new toys that keep appearing every single year. Well, that's another great episode of On the Throttle. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. As always, thanks for clicking, liking, and sharing. Feel free to go ahead, say hey to us in the comments. Let us know where you're tuning in from, and feel free to ask any questions or tell Josh how old he is and that MotoGP is amazing and that he's wrong. You can put all of those things in the comments. We always go
Bring
back
it.
through and read them and say hey to you. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.